They were the town's golden couple, a beloved schoolteacher and a quiet mechanic with a hidden past. Their wedding was the talk of Pine Hollow, their love a symbol of hope. But one warm summer night, they vanished without a trace. 4 years later, a hiker stumbled upon something in the woods. He unearthed a mystery that still haunts the town to this day. The rain pattered softly against the forest floor, washing away years of fallen leaves and pine needles. Travis Parker adjusted his backpack as he navigated the slippery trail, the scent of wet earth and pine filling his lungs. The spring storm had finally broken, leaving behind a mist that clung to the trees like ghostly fingers. He'd moved to Pine Hollow just 3 weeks ago, drawn by its reputation for scenic hiking trails and quiet mountain living. The locals had been friendly enough, if a bit reserved, the kind of polite distance you'd expect in a small town when faced with someone new. Travis paused to consult his trail map, then veered off onto a less traveled path that wound deeper into the Blue Ridge foothills. This particular trail had been unmarked on most maps, but the elderly owner of his rental cabin had mentioned it offered spectacular views. "Not many folks go there anymore," she'd said, a shadow crossing her face. "Too many bad memories, I suppose." The recent downpour had transformed the landscape, exposing parts of the earth normally hidden beneath years of forest debris. Several mudslides had altered the terrain, carving new contours into the hillside where the ground had given way. That's when something caught his eye. A glint of metal in the disturbed soil, catching the filtered sunlight that broke through the canopy. Curious, Travis knelt down, his hiking boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. His fingers brushed away wet leaves and mud to reveal something unmistakable, a gold band, a wedding ring. As he lifted it from its earthen bed, a second ring appeared beside it, slightly smaller, with tiny diamonds still sparkling despite years in the soil. Travis's breath caught in his throat when he noticed what lay just inches away. Partially exposed by the rainfall, a human bone protruded from a shallow depression in the earth. The white of the bone stood in stark contrast to the dark soil surrounding it. His hands trembled as he backed away, fumbling for his cell phone. By some miracle, he had a signal. Sheriff Robert Hayes's squad car wound up the narrow forest road, lights cutting through the lingering mist. After 30 years in law enforcement, 22 of them as sheriff of Pine Hollow, Hayes thought he'd seen it all. But the call from dispatch had sent a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the damp spring air. The young hiker stood waiting at the trailhead, face pale and drawn. Hayes recognized the look of someone who'd just had their sense of safety shattered. "You Parker?" Hayes asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. Travis nodded. "I marked the spot with some orange surveyor's tape I had in my pack. It's about half a mile in." Hayes signaled to the 2 deputies who'd arrived in a second vehicle, then followed Travis down the muddy trail. Neither spoke much, the weight of what waited ahead hanging between them. When they reached the site, Hayes's weathered face hardened. The forensic technician carefully placed the rings in an evidence bag, holding them up for the sheriff to examine. "Those belong to Lena and Daniel Rivera," Hayes said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've been missing for 4 years. The whole town's been looking for them since '88. He stared at the shallow depression where more bones were now visible as deputies carefully cleared away debris. The grave, if you could call something so shallow a grave, had been there all this time, just waiting to be discovered. "Why wasn't this found during the initial search?" Travis asked. Hayes sighed, surveying the changed landscape. This area was thick with mountain laurel and rhododendron back then, nearly impenetrable. Plus, we focused our search along the main roads and trails. This path was abandoned years ago after the flooding in '85 washed out the bridge further up, and whoever buried her knew what they were doing. The grave was well disguised until these recent rains and mudslides exposed it. "Call the medical examiner," Hayes instructed one of his deputies, "and get Margaret Collins on the phone. She deserves to hear this from me, not through the grapevine." Hayes turned back toward the trail, shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. 4 years of questions might finally get answers. But he knew from experience that some answers brought more pain than the questions themselves. If you enjoy fictional mysteries like this one, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Pine Hollow, summer 1988. The kind of small town that tourism brochures describe as charming and quaint, nestled against the misty ridges of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Population 2,317 according to the faded welcome sign, though locals insisted it was closer to 2,400 if you counted the Johnson twins born last spring. Main Street consisted of a handful of storefronts with hand-painted signs: Doreen's Diner, Harrison's Hardware, the Pine Hollow Bookshop, and the Mountain View Pharmacy. The single stoplight blinked lazily at the town center, more a formality than a necessity. This was a place where people still left their doors unlocked at night, where neighbors brought casseroles when you were sick and remembered your children's birthdays, where everyone knew your name, your business, and probably your secrets too. Lena Collins embodied everything good about Pine Hollow. Born and raised there, she'd left only long enough to earn her teaching degree before returning to shape young minds at Pine Hollow Elementary. Her third-grade classroom was a sanctuary of creativity and kindness, walls adorned with colorful artwork and inspirational quotes in her neat handwriting. Children adored Miss Collins, parents respected her. When she walked down Main Street in her sundresses and practical flats, people would smile and wave, grateful for her gentle influence on their children. "My Lena could have gone anywhere after college," Margaret Collins would tell anyone who'd listen, pride evident in her voice. "But she came home, said there's no better place to make a difference than where your roots are." Daniel Rivera was different. He arrived in Pine Hollow 3 years earlier with little more than his toolbox and a battered pickup truck. No family in tow, no backstory freely offered, just a quiet man with skilled hands and honest pricing who quickly earned a reputation as the best mechanic in the county. His garage sat at the edge of town, a converted barn with a hand-painted sign reading Rivera Auto Repair. Inside, everything was meticulously organized, tools hanging in perfect alignment, floor swept clean despite the nature of his work. Daniel himself operated with the same quiet efficiency, speaking only when necessary, but always willing to explain a repair in patient detail. "He fixed my Chevy when the dealership in Ashton said it was beyond saving," Earl Peterson told his buddies over coffee at Doreen's. "Charged me half what they quoted too. Man's got a gift with engines." Their love story unfolded through glimpses caught by the townspeople. Daniel waiting outside the elementary school with wildflowers picked from the roadside, Lena bringing homemade lunches to the garage on her breaks, stolen kisses when they thought no one was watching from Harrison's Hardware across the street. No one could pinpoint exactly when they became a couple. It seemed to happen naturally, inevitably, like the changing of seasons. The town embraced their romance as its own, something pure and promising in a world that often lacked both. Their spring wedding transformed the old chapel into something magical. White flowers and twinkling lights created an atmosphere of dreamlike wonder. When they exchanged vows, Daniel's voice broke with emotion. Lena's eyes shone with tears of joy. The reception at the Lakeside Pavilion lasted until dawn, the entire town celebrating as if a new era had begun. 2 months later, Lena announced her pregnancy. The news spread through Pine Hollow like wildfire. The golden couple expecting their first child. A perfect story getting even better. But beneath this picture-perfect surface, subtle tensions simmered. Margaret Collins watched her son-in-law with wary eyes. Her smiles tightened when Daniel entered a room. At the wedding reception, she pulled Sheriff Hayes aside, voice low and urgent. "Robert, did you ever find anything on where he came from before here?" Hayes shook his head. "Nothing concerning Margaret. Man's allowed his privacy." "There's privacy and there's secrecy," she replied, "and I'm not sure which one Daniel's keeping." Daniel's past remained a carefully guarded mystery. When asked about his family, he offered vague answers about growing up out west. No relatives attended the wedding. No childhood friends sent congratulations. His garage office contained no photographs older than 3 years. Meanwhile, hushed conversations at Doreen's diner speculated about Daniel's occasional unexplained absences, the mysterious phone calls he stepped outside to take, the locked drawer in his office that no one, not even Lena, was allowed to open. He went to Ashton 3 times last month, Doreen herself noted to the Wednesday morning coffee group. Said it was for parts, but Carl at the auto supply says Daniel hasn't placed an order in weeks. "Probably just getting things ready for the baby," Betty Harrison countered. "Men get strange when they're about to become fathers." As summer progressed, Lena's pregnancy became more visible. She glowed with maternal happiness, hand resting protectively over her growing belly. Daniel's protectiveness intensified. He insisted on driving her to and from school, started closing the garage early to be home with her, hovered nearby whenever strangers approached. The annual Pine Hollow Summer Festival arrived in mid-August. Lanterns illuminated the lakeside. Music and laughter filled the warm night air. Lena and Daniel arrived hand in hand, her floral maternity dress floating around her 7 months pregnant form, his protective arm never leaving her waist. Olivia Bennett, Lena's best friend since childhood, captured a photograph of them dancing beneath the lanterns. Lena's head rested on Daniel's shoulder, her eyes closed in contentment. Daniel looked directly at the camera, his expression unreadable, something like worry shadowing his features. No one paid particular attention when they slipped away from the festivities around midnight. No one noticed Daniel's tense expression as he helped Lena into his truck. No one thought to remember the direction they drove off in. It was the last time anyone in Pine Hollow saw them alive. The morning after the festival, Margaret Collins arrived at Lena and Daniel's cottage with fresh baked blueberry muffins, Lena's favorite. She'd spent most of her life in this same neighborhood, watching her daughter grow from a pigtailed girl jumping in puddles to the respected teacher and soon-to-be mother she'd become. The cottage sat quiet, too quiet. No smoke curled from the chimney despite the slight morning chill. No music played from the kitchen radio, where Lena usually began her mornings with coffee and classical music. The front door stood slightly ajar. "Lena?" Margaret called, pushing the door open wider. "Daniel?" Inside, everything appeared undisturbed. Coffee cups on the counter, Lena's prenatal vitamins beside the sink, Daniel's work boots by the door. The bed was made, which wasn't unusual. Lena had always been tidy, even as a child. But there was no sign of the couple. Margaret's concern deepened when she found Lena's purse still hanging on the coat rack. Her daughter never went anywhere without it. The small leather bag contained Lena's life, her wallet, keys, the small notebook where she jotted ideas for her classroom, and most importantly, her emergency contact information and medical details related to her pregnancy. Hours passed with no word. By afternoon, Margaret called Sheriff Hayes. "Robert, something's wrong. They're not answering their phones. Daniel's truck isn't here. Lena would have called if they were staying somewhere." Sheriff Hayes arrived within minutes. His initial casual concern shifted to professional alertness as he surveyed the scene. Nothing appeared disturbed or stolen, no signs of struggle. Just the unsettling emptiness of a home abruptly abandoned. "When's the last time anyone saw them?" Hayes asked, notebook in hand. "The festival last night," Margaret replied. "Olivia mentioned they left around midnight. Said Lena seemed tired, which isn't surprising given how far along she is." The search began immediately. Deputies checked local hospitals, neighboring towns, highway crash reports. Nothing. Daniel's garage remained locked, his appointments for the day written neatly in his schedule book. Lena's substitute teacher notes sat prepared on her desk at school, ready for her planned maternity leave in 6 weeks. By nightfall, the entire town mobilized. Volunteers combed the woods surrounding Pine Hollow. Others drove the mountain roads, checking every pullout and viewpoint. Local news stations broadcast their photographs. Lena's warm smile and kind eyes, Daniel's reserved expression and strong jaw. Pine Hollow transformed overnight. Porch lights remained on 24 hours a day, beacons to guide the missing couple home. The church stayed open for continuous prayer vigils. Children made posters with crayon drawings of their favorite teacher and her mechanic husband. 3 days into the search, a state trooper spotted Daniel's pickup truck, abandoned at a rest stop 50 miles away. The keys remained in the ignition. Lena's favorite cardigan lay folded on the passenger seat. A forensics team found trace amounts of blood on the driver's side door, type O, matching Daniel's. In town, rumors began to swirl. Some whispered that Daniel's mysterious past finally caught up with him. Others speculated about marital problems hidden behind their perfect facade. The crueler voices suggested Daniel himself might be responsible, that he snapped under the pressure of impending fatherhood. "I've known Lena since she was born," Doreen said firmly, silencing the gossip in her diner. "And Daniel's fixed every car in this town at one point or another. They deserve better than your speculation." Sheriff Hayes interviewed everyone who interacted with the couple at the festival. Olivia Bennett, Lena's best friend, recalled a tense exchange between Daniel and a stranger, a man in an expensive suit who seemed out of place among the casual festival goers. "Daniel went white as a sheet when he saw him," Olivia told Hayes. "They talked for maybe 5 minutes by the parking lot. I've never seen Daniel look so angry or scared." "Did you hear what they discussed?" Olivia shook her head. "I was too far away, but after the man left, Daniel kept looking over his shoulder the rest of the night, and they left much earlier than they'd planned." Meanwhile, Deputy Clark discovered something troubling at Daniel's garage. Behind a false panel in his office, they found $5,000 in cash, a handgun with the serial number filed off, and a driver's license in the name Michael Diaz, with Daniel's photograph. When Hayes ran the name through federal databases, red flags appeared immediately. Michael Diaz had connections to an organized crime family in Philadelphia, had testified against several key members in a racketeering case, had supposedly entered witness protection 4 years ago. Hayes stared at the computer screen, the pieces falling into place. Daniel Rivera hadn't chosen Pine Hollow by chance. He'd been placed there, hidden in plain sight, until something went wrong. The mystery deepened when Dr. Amelia Saunders, the town physician, revealed a concerning detail about Lena's pregnancy. She'd been experiencing complications, issues she asked me to keep confidential. She was worried it might be more serious than I initially thought. "What kind of complications?" Hayes pressed. Dr. Saunders hesitated. "I can't violate patient confidentiality even now, but I can tell you that Lena was scheduled for additional tests the week after the festival. She was concerned enough that she'd been researching specialists in Charlotte." The doctor paused, then added reluctantly, "There was an incident at my office last week. Someone accessed Lena's file after hours. My receptionist, Jenny, found it on her desk the next morning, though she swears she'd filed it properly the night before." "Did you report this?" Hayes asked sharply. "I didn't think much of it at the time," Dr. Saunders admitted. "Files get misplaced, but now—" "Who had access to your office after hours?" "Just the cleaning staff. And Jenny's boyfriend sometimes picks her up. He waits in the reception area." "I'll need their names," Hayes said, adding another layer to the already complex mystery. "What do you think happened to Lena and Daniel? Share your theories in the comments below." 2 weeks into the investigation, A man named Victor Maddox arrived in Pine Hollow, claiming to be Daniel's former associate. His expensive car and city clothes drew immediate attention in the small town. He checked into the only motel on Main Street, paying cash for a week's stay. "I just heard about Daniel," he told Sheriff Hayes during an unannounced visit to the station. "We worked together in Philadelphia, lost touch after he moved away." Hayes watched Maddox carefully during questioning. The man carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority, but his eyes never settled in one place for long. "And why are you here now?" "To help find my friend," Maddox replied smoothly. "Daniel saved my life once. I owe him." "Saved your life how?" "Business disagreement that got heated. Daniel stepped in before things went too far." Maddox smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was always the peacemaker. But when pressed about Daniel's past, Maddox became evasive, claimed he didn't know anything about witness protection or the name Michael Diaz, said he was just a businessman who met Daniel through mutual friends. Hayes noted that Maddox's expensive watch matched the description Olivia had given of the stranger at the festival. But when confronted, Maddox denied being in Pine Hollow before now. "Must be someone else. I was in D.C. that weekend. Have the hotel receipts to prove it." After Maddox left the station, Hayes made a call to the FBI. "I need everything you have on Victor Maddox and his connection to the Rossi crime family." The FBI agent on the other end went silent for a moment. "Sheriff, that's not information we share over unsecured lines. We'll send someone to you." 2 days later, Agent Catherine Wilson arrived from the Charlotte field office. Her crisp pantsuit and direct manner stood out in casual Pine Hollow. She and Hayes sat in his office, blinds drawn. "Victor Maddox isn't who he claims to be," Wilson explained, sliding a file across the desk. "He worked with Michael Diaz, your Daniel Rivera, but not as a friend. Maddox was Diaz's handler during the Rossi operation." "His handler? So Diaz was what? An informant?" Wilson shook her head. "Undercover agent, one of our best. He infiltrated the Rossi organization deeper than anyone had before. His testimony put 3 capos behind bars for life." "Then why is Maddox pretending not to know about Michael Diaz?" Wilson's expression darkened. "That's what concerns us. Maddox should have reported Daniel's disappearance immediately. The fact that he didn't, and that he's here now asking questions, suggests there's more happening than a witness protection failure." As weeks turned to months with no new leads, the search efforts gradually diminished. Margaret Collins refused to give up hope, organizing weekly search parties and maintaining a candlelight vigil on her front porch. The FBI took over the case, suspecting it's connected to witness protection. By winter, Pine Hollow settled into an uneasy acceptance that the mystery may never be solved. Lena and Daniel's cottage stood empty, frozen in time like a museum to lost possibilities. Margaret couldn't bear to clear out her daughter's belongings, so the nursery remained half-finished, yellow walls waiting for decorations that would never arrive. Christmas came and went, then Easter, then another Christmas. The seasons changed, but the ache in Pine Hollow remained constant, a wound that wouldn't heal. Agent Wilson visited occasionally, bringing updates that weren't really updates at all, just confirmations that the case remained open, that they hadn't forgotten. "What about Maddox?" Hayes asked during one such visit. "Any surveillance on him?" "He's back at his desk in D.C., Wilson replied. "Clean as a whistle according to internal affairs. All his paperwork on the Diaz case checks out." "I don't trust him," Hayes insisted. "Something's off." Wilson nodded. "I don't disagree, but without evidence." The investigation gradually grew cold. The once passionate search parties dwindled to just Margaret and a few loyal friends. The media moved on to newer tragedies. Pine Hollow learned to live with its unanswered questions, though they lingered like ghosts in everyday conversations. "Remember when Lena organized the Christmas pageant?" someone would say at Doreen's. "Daniel fixed my transmission just 2 weeks before they," another would add, leaving the sentence unfinished. Life continued in Pine Hollow, but something fundamental had changed. The town that once prided itself on safety and community now harbored a dark reminder that not all stories have satisfying endings. Spring 1992. The forest awakened after a long winter dormancy. Travis Parker, new to the area and eager to explore, hiked a secluded trail rarely used by locals. The recent heavy rains had reshaped parts of the landscape, exposing what was once hidden. When Travis discovered the wedding rings and called authorities, Sheriff Hayes arrived with a mixture of dread and hope. The shallow grave contained only partial remains, a jawbone, fragments of a skull, several vertebrae, enough to confirm at least one person was buried there, but not enough to immediately identify who. The wedding rings, however, spoke volumes. Inside the larger band, an inscription remained legible. To Daniel, my forever. Love, Lena. 4-12-88. The discovery reignited the investigation. National media descended on Pine Hollow. Old wounds reopened as FBI agents returned to question residents. Margaret Collins sat stoically through a press conference, the recovered wedding rings in a small glass case beside her. "Someone knows what happened to my daughter and her husband," she said, voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Someone has carried this secret for 4 years. It's time to come forward." Forensic analysis of the gravesite yielded new evidence. The bone fragments belonged to a female, approximately 25 to 30 years old. Carbon dating confirmed they'd been in the ground about 4 years. More troubling, ballistic evidence indicated the victim was shot at close range. Dr. Amelia Saunders reviewed her medical records from 1988. Lena's pregnancy was high risk. She had a condition that could have become life-threatening without proper medical care. If she went into premature labor somewhere without access to a hospital, the doctor hesitated, then continued. The baby had an encephaly, a fatal neural tube defect. The child wouldn't have survived long after birth, if at all. Lena knew this from her latest ultrasound, but I'm not sure if she'd told Daniel yet. "How would Daniel have found out if Lena hadn't told him?" Hayes asked. "My receptionist, Jenny, was dating Anthony Calabrese back then, though she knew him as Tony Calhoun. He picked her up from work the day I discussed the results with Lena. He could have overheard or seen the file." Hayes's mind raced. Anthony Calabrese, the Rossi enforcer who supposedly died in a car crash the day after the Riveras disappeared? Dr. Saunders blanched. "I had no idea who he really was. Neither did Jenny." Sheriff Hayes reopened Daniel's garage, which had remained untouched since their disappearance. A thorough forensic sweep revealed something overlooked in the initial investigation: blood traces behind a storage cabinet, attempts to clean the floor with bleach. Hayes theorized aloud to his deputy, what if they never left town that night? What if something happened right here, and the rest, the abandoned truck, everything else, was staged? The town transformed once again. The discovery awakened old fears and suspicions. Children who had been too young to remember the original disappearance now whispered about the shallow grave lady on school code playgrounds. At Doreen's diner, conversations halted whenever the bell above the door signaled a new arrival, as if the truth might walk in at any moment. If you're captivated by mysteries like this one, be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Meanwhile, Victor Maddox returned to Pine Hollow after the discovery made national news. This time, he didn't bother with pretenses. "I know what you found in those woods," he told Hayes during an unannounced visit to the sheriff's office. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," Hayes challenged. Maddox hesitated, running a hand through his now graying hair. "Daniel, Michael, wasn't just any witness. He was my partner. We were deep undercover in the Rossi family for 3 years. When the operation ended, he received death threats. Entering witness protection wasn't optional. So why did he leave the program? Come here? That's not standard procedure. Love makes people do stupid things, Maddox shrugged. He met Lena during a brief assignment near here. Couldn't let her go. Thought he could just disappear, start over. And the Rossis found him, Hayes concluded. Maybe, or maybe something else happened. Maddox slides a thumb drive across the desk. This contains everything I legally can share about the operation. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. After Maddox left, Hayes called Agent Wilson. Maddox just changed his story completely, now claims he and Daniel were partners. That part's actually true, Wilson admitted. They worked together for years. But Maddox shouldn't be in Pine Hollow, and he definitely shouldn't be sharing operational details with local law enforcement. Something's wrong. The FBI analysis of Maddox's information confirmed Daniel's identity as Michael Diaz, undercover agent. His testimony had helped convict 3 high-ranking members of the Rossi crime family, earning him a permanent place on their hit list. Yet something didn't add up for Hayes. If the Rossis found them, why leave the rings? Why a shallow grave that would eventually be discovered? Professional hits don't leave breadcrumbs. He stared at the evidence board in his office, photos and notes connected by red string. Daniel's truck at the rest stop, Lena's remains in the woods, blood in the garage, the wedding rings beside the grave. None of it followed the pattern of a professional hit. The mystery deepened when forensic results identified a second blood type at the garage, type AB, matching neither Lena nor Daniel. DNA testing, still relatively new in 1992, suggested it came from a male related to Lena. But Margaret was an only child, and Lena's father died years before. Could Lena have had a brother no one knew about? Hayes asked Margaret during a difficult conversation at her home. Margaret's hands trembled around her teacup. Number, absolutely not. Frank and I only had Lena. What about more distant relatives, cousins who might have visited? None that would have been here that summer. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Why are you asking about this? Hayes chose his words carefully. We found blood at Daniel's garage, 3 distinct types, Lena's, Daniel's, and a third person's, male, related to Lena. Margaret's teacup clattered against its saucer. That's impossible. After a long moment, her shoulders slumped. Unless Frank had a son before we met. From a brief relationship in college, he never met the boy. The mother moved away, married someone else. The child never knew Frank was his biological father. Did Lena know about this half-brother? Margaret shook her head. We never told her. There didn't seem to be any point. But last year, while going through Frank's papers after he died, I found letters. The boy, Thomas, had tried to contact Frank years ago. Frank never responded. Do you have an address? A last name? Stevens. Thomas Stevens. The last letter was postmarked from Ashton, just 30 miles from here. Margaret looked up, horror dawning on her face. You don't think... A break came when Hayes interviewed Olivia Bennett again, showing her photographs of known Rossi associates. She immediately identified one. That's him, the man who spoke with Daniel at the festival, I'm certain. The man, Anthony Calabrese, worked as an enforcer for the Rossis. Records showed he died in a car accident one day after the Riveras disappeared. Hayes obtained permission to exhume Calabrese's body, suspecting the accident was staged. Meanwhile, Dr. Saunders made another discovery when the hospital in Charlotte sent over Lena's complete medical history. Look at this genetic screening from her prenatal workup, she told Hayes. Lena had a rare blood marker, one that would only be present if she and the baby's father were closely related. Are you saying Daniel and Lena were related? Hayes asked, confused. But if Lena had a half-brother she never knew about, and if that half-brother somehow became involved with her life without revealing their connection. Thomas Stevens, Hayes murmured. We need to find him. The exhumation of Calabresi's body revealed the truth. The corpse belonged not to the Rossi enforcer, but to Daniel Rivera. Dental records confirmed it conclusively. Daniel, not Lena, was buried in the accident victim's grave. Hayes assembled the evidence into a new timeline. Daniel learns about the baby's condition from Jenny's boyfriend, Calabresi, who had been sent to monitor Daniel. Takes Lena from the festival. Something happens at the garage. An argument. A struggle. Calabresi arrives, perhaps sent to warn or threaten Daniel. Violence erupts. Daniel is killed. But that still doesn't explain what happened to Lena, Hayes told his deputy, or why Calabresi would take her afterward. The final piece fell into place when the FBI located Calabresi living under an assumed name in Arizona. When arrested, he offered a full confession in exchange for leniency. "I didn't go there to kill anyone," Calabresi explained during his recorded statement. "Maddox sent me," said Diaz was thinking about coming back, testifying in another case. Wanted me to remind him what was at stake. According to Calabresi, he arrived at the garage to find Daniel and Lena in a heated argument. She was hysterical, saying he'd lied about everything, that she knew who he really was. He was trying to calm her down, saying they needed to leave town immediately. When Calabresi identified himself, Daniel attacked him. In the struggle, Daniel was shot with his own gun. Lena, witnessing her husband's death, went into premature labor from the shock. "I didn't know what to do," Calabresi continued. "She was bleeding, screaming. I called Maddox. He said to bring her to a cabin in the mountains, said he'd send a doctor. But Maddox never sent help. Instead, he arrived himself hours later, assessed the situation, and made a calculated decision. Lena and her baby wouldn't survive without a hospital. Witnesses couldn't be left alive. He shot her while I was outside," Calabresi's voice broke. "Said it was mercy. Made me help bury her in the woods. Then we staged the accident with Diaz's body. Made it look like I died instead." "And the rings?" Hayes asked. "Maddox kept them as insurance against me talking. 4 years later, he must have decided I'd been silent long enough. Planted them himself near where we buried her. Wanted the truth to come out on his terms." "Why wait 4 years?" Hayes pressed. Statute of limitations on some of Maddox's financial crimes was about to expire. He needed a distraction, something to occupy the FBI while he cleaned up loose ends. The Rivera case was perfect, emotional, high profile, but with a convenient fall guy. Me. Hayes stared hard at the confession tape. "So where's Maddox now?" The answer came from Agent Wilson, who burst into Hayes's office the next morning. "Maddox cleaned out his accounts yesterday, purchased a ticket to Mexico under an alias. He's running." "And Thomas Stevens, Lena's half-brother?" Wilson shook her head. "No record of him since 1988. He worked at the hospital in Ashton, had access to Lena's medical records when she was referred there for specialized tests. We think he discovered their connection, reached out to her privately, and she was planning to tell Daniel after the festival. So Lena discovered she had a brother, learned her baby had a fatal condition, and found out her husband was in witness protection. All in the same week," Hayes said grimly. "No wonder things exploded that night." If this story has kept you entertained, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more mysteries. FBI agents tracked Victor Maddox to a private airstrip outside Washington, D.C. He was arrested while boarding a plane to Mexico, carrying a new identity and $1.2 million in cash. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Calabresi's testimony. Financial records showing Maddox had been working for the Rossis while posing as an FBI agent. The thumb drive he gave Hayes, which contained hidden tracking software designed to monitor the investigation. How long had he been dirty? Hayes asked Wilson as they watched Maddox's arraignment on television. "We may never know," she admitted. "The Rossis had people in every level of law enforcement. Maddox had the perfect cover as an FBI handler. He could control what information reached us, what evidence disappeared, which witnesses were deemed credible." Maddox's trial became national news. Prosecutors revealed his elaborate double cross, pretending to protect Daniel while actually hunting him for the Rossis, using Lena's murder to silence Calabrese, planting the wedding rings years later when he feared Calabrese might talk. It wasn't just about silencing witnesses, the prosecutor explained to the jury. Maddox had been embezzling money from seized Rossi assets for years. When Diaz threatened to come forward about financial irregularities he'd noticed, Maddox couldn't risk exposure. In Pine Hollow, the truth brought a complicated closure. Margaret Collins finally laid her daughter and unborn grandchild to rest in a proper ceremony. The shallow grave where Lena was found became a memorial garden planted with her favorite wildflowers. The town gathered for the funeral, the church overflowing with people who had spent 4 years wondering and waiting. Children who had once been Lena's students, now 4 years older, placed handmade cards around her photograph. Daniel, despite the revelations about his past, was buried beside his wife, their complicated truth acknowledged but overshadowed by the genuine love they had shared. They were both trying to build something real, Margaret told the congregation. Even with secrets between them, their love was honest. That's what I choose to remember. Sheriff Hayes retired after the case concluded, the weight of 4 years finally catching up to him. Sometimes, he told his replacement, the most dangerous secrets aren't hidden in the woods. They're walking around in plain sight, wearing friendly faces. At Daniel and Lena's gravesite, their wedding photograph stood in eternal tribute, their smiling faces forever frozen in a moment of pure hope, before secrets and lies destroyed everything they might have become. The wedding rings, returned to Margaret after the trial, rested in a small glass case on her mantel. Visitors to Pine Hollow still whispered about the mystery, about how a chance discovery by a hiker exposed a conspiracy no one could have imagined. Travis Parker eventually moved away from Pine Hollow, the weight of his discovery too heavy to bear in daily life. But before leaving, he planted a sapling near the memorial garden, a symbol of how even the darkest truths eventually find their way into the light. And in the misty mountains surrounding the town, hikers occasionally left flowers at the memorial garden, honoring not just 2 lives lost, but the enduring power of truth to find its way to the surface, no matter how shallow the grave that tries to contain it. The story of Lena and Daniel Rivera became part of Pine Hollow's identity, a cautionary tale about secrets, a reminder that even in the closest communities, we never truly know one another completely. Their tragic end served as a stark counterpoint to their beginning, a love story that had once symbolized hope, now forever teaching the cost of deception. Yet somehow, in the telling and retelling, something redemptive emerged. Daniel had loved Lena genuinely despite his hidden past. Lena had created a life of meaning and connection, despite its brevity. And a town that could have fractured under the weight of tragedy instead found renewed purpose in preserving their memory. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the mist rolls down from the mountains, locals swear they can see 2 figures walking hand in hand near the lake where they were last seen alive, echoes of a love that, despite everything, refuses to be forgotten.